Today is Monday the 2nd of September 2019 and it's a very, very special day for me today because it's my first day as a full-time landscape photographer. In a couple of weeks' time I will be celebrating my 45th birthday. Now I know I don't look that old, but I am. And most men my age, when they have their midlife crisis, will either buy a Porsche or will start chasing much younger women. They will not give up their career, jack in their incredibly well-paid job and start pretending to be a landscape photographer. I wasn't born in Cumbria. I'm originally from the southeast of England, and about 12 years ago my wife and I decided that we wanted to live in the Lake District. Now at the time I was working in IT and my specialism was performance testing large systems, and that kind of work, there isn't an awful lot of it here in the Lake District, and so for the last 9 years I've been working in Scotland. And that meant that while my wife was here in the Lake District, I was living in Livingston for most of the working week. You may remember that at the beginning of the year I was lucky enough to go on holiday to Cuba for a couple of weeks, and while we were there, just very casually, completely innocently, Mrs. Sale made the observation that it was the first time that we'd spent 2 weeks together for over 4 years. And at the time we kind of laughed it off, but as time went by we became more and more intolerant to that situation. Once the decision had been made that I needed to commit full-time to our life here in Cumbria, the question then became, what on earth was I going to do for a living? As I said before, IT jobs here are few and far between and they're not very well paid. It was actually Helen's idea that I pursue my passion and try and make a living as a landscape photographer. Up until that point, I never thought I would ever be good enough to try and pursue that as a career. So this video is all about my first week as a full-time landscape photographer, and we're going to focus on what do I want to achieve and how am I going to go about it. And this morning here at Tarnhouse, I don't think I've got off to too bad a start. Obviously, now that I have made the decision to become a full-time photographer, I've got to somehow figure out how I'm going to make a living from my landscape photography. And that's not going to be easy. I think even once I'm established, I'm not even going to earn half what I used to in my old job. The problem with trying to create a better lifestyle for yourself, it doesn't come cheap. And that's exactly why I've made this change. I want to create a better lifestyle for myself, to spend more time doing the things that I love, in the place that I love, and spending time with the people that I love. I think landscape photography is definitely not the career for you if you want to be a millionaire. But fortunately, over the years, as I've got older, I've become less and less interested in money and less motivated by material things. Now, although it's not going to be easy, it's not like I'm going into this completely unprepared. There have been things that we have been working on for a number of years. The first thing that we did was when we moved north about 9 years ago, we downsized. We reduced our mortgage quite considerably. And the second thing that we've done in the last 12 months is to get rid of all of the loans that we had. So we've paid off all the loans on our cars. The only thing that we have now is our mortgage. Having reduced our outgoings as much as we possibly could, the next thing we needed to do was to start building up our savings. Now I wanted at least enough money in the bank that I wouldn't have to earn anything at all for 12 months. But obviously, if I could now start generating even a small income, that money could stretch out to maybe 18 months or even 2 years. This is going to be extremely difficult for me. It's going to be hard enough for me to up the level of my photography to the standard it needs to be. But I'm also going to have to become a businessman. I'm going to have to understand how I can generate an income. And that's the bit that worries me the most, but it's also the bit that excites me the most. I'm definitely up for the challenge. Over the years, Mrs. Sale and I have lived by the mantra that nothing in life worth having came easy. We've definitely learned that if you want something badly enough, you're just going to have to work as hard as you can, and even then, you might need some luck. Now, just because something is difficult, and in this case, maybe even impossible, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. And I, for one, would definitely rather try and fail than live with the regret that I never tried at all. Anyway, day 2 of being a full-time landscape photographer, and Crummock Water has been damp. Now at this point, there are some of you that are thinking, hang on a minute, you're not good enough to be a professional photographer. And you're absolutely right. I am an average photographer at best. I have my moments, but they are few and far between. And that's really what this process is all about. By going full-time, what I hope to do is to give myself a lot more time to shoot, so I can get out there and improve the standard of my photography. When you first start out in photography, every time you go out, you run around and you take 101 shots. And with every shot that you take, you learn something. So your learning curve is very, very steep indeed. But eventually what happens is that, of course, tails off. And if you're me, and you end up going to a location and standing around for ages like I am this morning, waiting for the light, you only take 1 or 2 shots. And for me, 1 day a week just wasn't cutting it anymore. I didn't feel that I was improving at a rate that I was happy with. And so what I want to do is to give myself a lot more opportunity to shoot and try and do exactly the same thing when I first started out. Take lots of shots, but of course that means having to go out on lots of days. Over the next year, I want to dedicate as much time as I possibly can to building my portfolio and improving my photography. And I think if I can do that, if I can put in the hours, I think I can become a much, much better photographer. I think I have the potential to do that. I just need to execute it. At this point, I should probably point out that I know that landscape photographers don't spend their entire time shooting. I know there's an awful lot that goes on behind the scenes, there's an awful lot involved in running a successful business. But on the other hand, if you haven't got the game, no one's going to hire you for one-to-ones, no one's going to come on your workshops, and no one's going to buy your books. I see this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me. I'm never going to get this opportunity again. The opportunity to take 12 months out of my career and dedicate that to my photography to see if I've got what it takes to be a professional photographer. And if it all goes wrong and I have to end up going back to IT at the end of it, at the very least, I should be a much, much, much better photographer. So, my 3rd day as a full-time landscape photographer, and Manistee near Derwent Water has been flooded. One of the other things that I've become aware of over the years is my need for goals and objectives to keep me motivated. My old boss, my old mentor, used to say to me, Chris, he said, you know, when you're up, you're brilliant. You're the best there is, but when you're down, you're completely ineffective. When you have a goal, when you have an objective, it keeps you moving forward. You have something in the distance to aim for. When you don't, you kind of lose that focus and you end up doing things that perhaps aren't necessarily going to help you achieve your end objective. In order to set yourself goals and objectives, you've got to know what you're ultimately trying to achieve. And once you know that, then you can lay out a plan that says that you need to do these things in order to reach that ultimate goal. As my boss used to say, you've got to know what success looks like. As I've already said, my ultimate aim, my ultimate goal is to become a full-time landscape photographer, to be able to support myself and my family through the money that I can make as a landscape photographer. So that's what I'm trying to get to. And now my next job is to figure out what I need to do in order to achieve that. And that's become the biggest problem for me so far, because there just seems to be so many opportunities, so many different things that I can try and do, that the trick is actually picking which ones to focus on first. But all that stuff can wait until next week, because this week what I've been focused on is adjusting to my new lifestyle. So that involves getting out and shooting as often as I can, and then in the afternoons getting home and spending time working on my photography. It's not just the new business side of things that I've had to adjust to, I've also had to adjust to my new home life. So being at home all week and spending time with Helen. And I've really enjoyed that aspect of it, probably more than the photography, and I think that does tell me that at least I'm heading in the right direction. So, day 4 of being a full-time landscape photographer, and Loweswater, or at least the light at Loweswater, has been epic. So over the next 12 months, I'm going to be focused on my photography and that transition from hapless amateur to semi-competent professional. Undoubtedly, there are going to be many humps and bumps along the way, many highs and many lows, and I want to share all of them with you on this channel through these videos. Up until about 2.5 years ago, there'd always been something missing from my photography. There was just something that I couldn't quite put my finger on. When I started my YouTube channel, it became very obvious straight away what that missing piece was. And that is something that we talk about a lot, and that's the community that we are all part of. I get a huge amount of support from many people within the community. Every comment, every like, every kind word has led me taking one step after another, getting closer to my goal. When I started YouTube, I had absolutely no idea where it was going to lead. I certainly didn't think it was going to be the main component to getting me to becoming, or at least attempting to be, a professional. Generally, I like to create these videos when I'm out on location. I don't like filming in my office, and so each week, along with the video, I'll be publishing a blog article that's kind of like a diary of what's been going on behind the scenes. So for this week, you can find a link to that post in the description below, and you'll also find a link to an article that I published last week that tells the backstory of the last 12 years and how I've got to this point. Before I go, I do just want to say a big thank you to everybody who has supported me on my journey so far, particularly those of you that have left comments on my recent Instagram, Twitter and blog posts announcing my decision to at least attempt to turn professional. But anyway, day 5 as a full-time landscape photographer, and Derwentwater has been surprisingly good. IT jobs here are few and far between, and they're certainly not very well paid. It was actually, oh my God, I speak, highs and many lows, And I want to share those with you all on this through. As my old boss used to say, you've got to know what the future looks like. No, he didn't say that.